Version 13 has finally arrived, and I gotta tell you up front, it is absolutely incredible. I would even go as far to say unbelievable in many situations, and I fully came into this expecting it to be better than version 12, but what I was not expecting was for it to be this much better, especially being the very first release with a brand new native Hardware 4 AI model. Although there still are some issues that we're going to go over, the issues are not related to driving performance at all. And in my opinion, the increase in performance we're seeing here is an even larger improvement than what we saw going from version 11 to 12 when end-to-end took over, which is really saying something. The clips you're seeing now are part of a full stress test through the Berkeley Hills that we're going to get into a bit later, and trust me, you're going to want to see it. But first, I'd like to go over some of the situations I experienced the very first night using this new update. The moment that you're about to see literally sent chills down my spine. It really is one of the most impressive moves I've ever seen pulled off by full self-driving. We're obviously making a right here, but then we have an immediate left-hand turn to make, as you can see on the map, and there's also traffic building up at the light. Even with a steady stream of cars approaching from our left-hand side and neighboring lanes, it creeps out into the open lane and then immediately turns on its turn signal and in one motion goes ahead and gets us all the way over into our left-hand turning lane like it was nothing. Now, I don't typically play many clips back in slow motion, but this one is worth it. I want you to just keep your eye on the steering wheel throughout this move. Not only was it executed smooth as butter, but the planning it did around these other vehicles that are still in motion and the way it executed was just absolutely input for input perfect. And I know there's likely going to be a bunch of people disagreeing with me on that one. This was a pretty aggressive mood, especially just being in the standard profile, but regardless, very, very impressive. There are many subtle things that add up to something huge with version 13. Like, we're going to be making a right turn at this light ahead to get to the supercharger, and this is something where full self-driving would always turn on the turn signal early and confuse the drivers that are off to our right here. But now it waits until after it gets by these people and then turns on the turn signal after. And I know that doesn't seem very huge, but for the amount of complaining I've done over the years about turn signals on this channel, I had to point it out. Another thing that's been vastly improved is the parking lot performance. Interestingly, I don't think there's any release notes that specifically say anything about the parking lot, but every parking lot I've been through so far has been handled very, very well, going a really nice, reasonable speed, and really just never having moments that make me feel like I have to take over. Parking lots were the one area where I was always extremely cautious. I mean, you always have to be. There could be somebody walking out from any one of these cars, but it never did anything that strayed away from what a good, safe driver would be doing. So I never really felt uncomfortable or the need to take over. It's also pretty cool that it's visualizing these cars in front of us on the freeway. Just noticed that, but had to also point it out. This is where things get a little bit crazy and maybe a little bit inconsistent in version 13. You'll see the car come to a complete stop here, and I fully expected it just to shift itself into park like normal. And there's even a message on the screen saying take over to proceed, but suddenly that message disappears and the car continues on forward. And I wasn't really sure what it was doing or what I was expecting it to do, but it sure wasn't this. The car then turns to the left, shifts itself into reverse, and backs into the supercharger stall. And not only does it do a fairly good job of backing into the supercharger, but it actually backs up so far that it clears the curb behind it and gets close enough to plug in the car. I don't even think Auto Park is capable of doing this right now. Absolutely wild. There were a few questionable moments that happened. Like up here, you're going to see the car shift itself into the right lane suddenly with no turn signal or anything. And there's a few more moments that we're going to look at, but overall, I've been super impressed. You can even see some cars coming in from the right-hand side. This is a little bit of a confusing intersection, but it never skips a beat and just stays super, super smooth. And I know that I've said other versions were smooth. I told you all feel that version 12.5 was smoother than the average Uber driver I've had. And I think those of you who have tried 12.5, especially on hardware 4, would probably agree with that. But I will tell you, version 13 is smoother than any Uber driver I've ever had. And it's the little things that make it feel like that. Like, you can see it right when we turned onto this street, the car seemed to see the car ahead with hazards on, and it never even got close to the speed limit. Typically, when you see a car with hazards on that's double parked in the middle of the road, it means pedestrians are close by. So really nice to see the car understanding some of these context clues and modifying its driving behavior based off of them. And the craziest part about all of this, I think, is that this is completely end-to-end, meaning there's no manual human programming telling the car to slow down and be extra cautious when it sees a car with hazards on or something. It just naturally learned to do that based off all the driving clips that it's seen. You can also see it very cautiously going over this curb before it pulls into our destination here. This was another pain point with version 12 that seems to be super consistently well handled in version 13. And that fleet learning applies to other areas besides traffic as well. You can see it's pretty foggy here, and although version 13 is doing a really good job of getting up to the speed limit and staying there, when it's foggy and it's the only car around, it stays below the speed limit, which I think is very appropriate. And even more interesting, it seems to take some context clues from other cars. Like, even though it's still foggy, it still has those cars ahead to rely on. So it's actually getting fairly close to the speed limit this entire time. But as soon as they turn off onto a different road and FSD is the solo driver with no lead car, it immediately slows down. Very, very impressive stuff. The one criticism I have about the car driving in foggy conditions is that it still tries to turn on the auto high beams whenever possible, which you really don't want to do in the fog. So Tesla, please fix. There were even times during this first drive where I purposely disengaged just to put the car into a bad situation. Like here, where I put it into the far left lane where we had to make a right very shortly and has to get across all these lanes of traffic. And even though it waited longer than I expected and I thought it was going to run into trouble, I mean, it's zero trouble. Zero drama, zero harsh inputs. Even when kind of unexpected things happen, it's just smooth all the time. It is quite ridiculous, honestly. I know you're probably getting sick of me telling you how smooth this version is, but I need to get the point across because this is the very first version ever that I think is going to be widely used and accepted by pretty much anybody. I think my mom could use this and feel perfectly comfortable. Anyways, we're going to take a look at a couple of more moments that happened on the freeway drive back home after recording all this, because I think these moments were absolutely unbelievable and I honestly need your help dissecting them to tell me if I'm crazy or not. So you can see the standard profile here doing a good job staying out of the fast lane, going a decent speed, you know, staying centered in its lane, letting the cars pass, just all the usual stuff. And then suddenly, when a particular vehicle went to pass us, it actually moved over to the right-hand side of the lane. I realize that it's probably pretty hard to tell over video, but you can see the car shifting over here, and I did feel it inside of the car, and it was pretty abnormal because it didn't happen for any other vehicle. I actually saved the Tesla cam footage, and I wanted to see if it saw something in the road or something, or maybe there was some glare there, but no, that is not what happened. What appears to have happened, based on the footage, and I know this is crazy, is that you can see the van swerving back and forth over its lane right now. It even went over the lane lines a little bit, and then when it went to make their move to pass, full self-driving gave them extra room. And while this very well could have been a fluke and I need to do more testing to verify, it absolutely blew my mind. Here's another one. We're driving along and not the car in front of us, but the car in front of him brakes really hard because he wants to change lanes. Just human type of stuff. And you can see full self-driving does an excellent job of staying extremely smooth through that entire maneuver. A little bit close, but still extremely smooth. But here's the crazy part. I thought that the car was reacting to the brake lights in front of me because that's the only thing that I could see. But no, you can see on the visualization, it's perfectly tracking the car in front of him and making its decision well before. I have no idea how it was able to track that car so well. I really have no answers here, only questions. Like, am I crazy or did all that stuff really just happen? And after you watch the car beautifully handle this yellow light and weird intersection and not get caught up halfway through it or do any awkward maneuvers, even though this was kind of a stressful situation, we are going to get into the part you probably are waiting for, which are the bad things that happened during this drive. And to be honest, there wasn't very many of them, but there were a few. The worst of which happens right after we make this left-hand turn, where the car hits probably the biggest pothole that I have ever hit in my entire life. And yes, that felt every bit as bad as it sounded. I'm usually able to spot potholes from pretty far away, and although I did see this one didn't look bad from far, but right when you get about a foot away, you can see it goes down deep. Luckily, no damage to the car, and if I'm being completely honest with you, I probably would have hit it as well. Pretty unfortunate, but very glad that I removed those performance wheels, because this definitely could have ended the entire drive. I really only had one what I would consider like a traditional disengagement, which happened when this ambulance pulled forward into the intersection and the car creeped into this keep clear section, so I did disengage here. And while not necessarily a critical disengagement, it was rather surprising to see the car do this, because usually version 12 does this pretty well. Another thing that it did that was a little bit uncomfortable was followed this human in front a little bit too closely, and you can see it cuts into the oncoming lane just a little bit. It wasn't severe enough to where I felt like the car was going to get itself into an accident or anything. Just, if anything, it's just a little bit rude to the other driver, but you know, this is how humans drive, so everybody kind of understands. Something else that was kind of funny that I experienced is that it really seems like it wants to just roll stop signs. And I'm not saying it wants to just blow by them, but it wants to roll most stop signs at 1 mile an hour. And it's almost like there's something in the back of its mind that's like, oh wait, I can't do that. So you'll see we approach the stop sign here, we slow to 1 mile an hour and it's ready to proceed. And then it's like, oh, forgot to stop, got to get to 0. And then it hits 0 and continues on. The double stop used to happen in earlier versions of version 12, but this feels completely different. This doesn't feel like a creep or anything. This honestly feels like it's ready to proceed, and then it forgets that it has to get down to 0 miles an hour, and then remembers at the last second. You'll see it again here, slow to 1 miles an hour, and then it wants to go, but it just has to get down to 0 first. Tesla and Nitsa, if you're listening to this, please just let the car do what it wants and roll 1 mile an hour. It's considerably slower than most humans go through stop signs. There's also some seemingly random moments where the car decides now is a good time to do a single wipe of the windshield that just happens every once in a while. That wasn't an issue in version 12. I know some people get very upset about dry wiping of the windshield, so definitely had to throw that one out there. And the last thing is that the car seems very inconsistent about when it wants to shift into reverse. You've seen from clips that it's very capable, but as it approaches this dead end here, you'll see it kind of turn the steering wheel and does all the right moves, and the path planner wants to back up, but just like version 12, it doesn't seem like it's allowed to shift to reverse. I actually think I figured out when it's willing to shift to reverse and when it's not, which I'll be explaining in the full drive right after I tell you about this video's sponsor, DeleteMe. I really didn't think my online footprint was that big of a deal. Until election year. After getting dozens of robocalls, I knew that my data was out there somewhere it shouldn't be, and I wanted to get it removed, but I wasn't sure even how to start. Luckily, DeleteMe reached out to sponsor the video and asked me what information I would like removed online. A few short days later, they sent me a report showing 60 different data brokers that were storing and selling all kinds of my personal information. And this isn't some random PDF they sent me to show you. This is my actual report. If you weren't aware, just about anyone can go buy your personal data from these brokers, which in my case had information about not only me, but also my immediate family. And that's a bit scary because this data can be used by bad actors for things like scam calls, phishing, identity theft, doxing, and just all the other terrible online crap you don't ever want to have to deal with. Honestly, DeleteMe is a very cool and almost necessary service nowadays that I've been very happy with and I highly recommend. By using this QR code or link in the description, mention, viewers of this channel get 20% off all their consumer plans, which honestly is a pretty fantastic deal for the service they offer. They're also based out of the USA, which is always awesome, and they sponsor your favorite YouTube channel. So do yourself a favor and get deleted from the parts of the internet that you don't want to be. A big thanks to DeleteMe for sponsoring content like this, and back to the show. Starting off at the Berkeley Supercharger like usual, and no need to hit the gear stalk to turn it on, just a simple touch on the touchscreen engages full self-driving. You can see even though full self-driving is engaged, it's not immediately pulling out of the parking spot. It's staying very patient and waiting for all these other cars who are entering or exiting the parking lot to clear its path first. Another cool thing is that I backed as close as I possibly could to this curb, and you can see when it pulls out, it actually turns right a little bit before turning left so that the back wheel can clear the curb. Really, really nice. It also kind of abandoned its navigation route. The nav route had it turning right out of that parking spot, but it decided to go left instead. No big deal, just thought it was interesting. Going a very nice and reasonable speed through this parking lot, I think, and it's also slowing down much better for these speed bumps. I think the last time we went through here on the last version of version 12, it completely missed them, so really nice to see. You can also see that in parking lots, steering wheel jitter is completely gone. Version 12 struggled sometimes in parking lots. When it'd get confused, you'd really feel it in the steering wheel, but version 13 has none of that. There's also a pedestrian about to cross the street in front of us, and as soon as FSD recognizes that he's crossing to the left, it immediately just goes around him to the right without even slowing down at all. Just so natural feeling. It is absolutely unbelievable. And just so you're aware, my main goal going into this drive was a real stress test for version 13. Every destination I picked on the map, I thought it looked like a dead end, because I really didn't want to upload my first impressions video and just show you those little minor hiccups that I had and not have any real criticism about the way that it drives or anything like I usually do. So I figured coming here would definitely give me that insight into where it's still struggling. Really nice, smooth job getting us out of this parking lot. Probably the best that it's ever been handled. And you can even see we used to fly over this last curb that's deceivingly rough right here. And version 13 actually slows down and goes a very nice speed over it. Here's another example of the new and improved stop sign behavior. Version 12 used to stop behind the stop line every time, where version 13 will stop with its front tires basically on the stop line, which honestly just makes all the difference in the world. That's another one that's seemingly small but makes a huge difference in practice. Those stop lines are typically painted way too far back where you have no incoming visibility of traffic, so I really, really love to see it. The stop sign behavior is way better. Gonna be fast forwarding the majority of this, and at least until we get into the narrow hills, because that's when things get very interesting. But we'll slow down in a few places where I've noticed some differences between previous versions. Like here, for example, at the following speed bumps. These are speed bumps that have been handled many different ways on many different versions of self-driving. Version 12 definitely slowed down for them, but it would kind of do all of its braking at the very end and then go over them. But the way that version 13 seems to anticipate it and slows down early and just goes a nice consistent speed just feels so good inside the car. I also am not sure if you noticed, but I upgraded my camera equipment again, trying to give the best viewing experience possible. After doing all this, I don't know if it was well worth it. It basically just looks the same as before, but let me know if you notice any differences. Like that natural lens flare, nice. This is our first interaction of the day with an oncoming car. You can see basically no reaction from full self-driving here, no twitches of the steering wheel or slowing down at all. But version 12 was really good in those situations too, so honestly, I expect nothing less. We're approaching the end of our first destination, which is down this dead-end street that is very, very narrow. Our pin is set on the house onto the right-hand side up here, and although there's no options for what to do at the destination like that's coming in future updates, it seems like it does a fairly good job at actually pulling over in a fairly good spot, I would say, like if it was going to be picking up or dropping somebody off. And after a complete stop, it goes ahead and just shifts itself into park. Well done. And after setting in a new random destination pin, this is where things get really crazy. Looking at the end of this road, I figured there was approximately a 0% chance full self-driving was going to be able to do this one on its own. You can see there's a curb off to our left, the gate's not open to our right, and this is just a straight dead end. I know a lot of human drivers personally that I know for a fact would not be able to turn around on a road like this, and without skipping a beat, full self-driving shifts itself into reverse and shimmies its way out of here, doing about a 10-point turn Austin Powers style. Absolutely unbelievable stuff here. You can also see the speed of these shifts is really amazing. The car actually shifts itself into reverse and goes forward before it comes to a full stop. So while it's still rolling 1 mile an hour, it's doing the shifts. I wish you could see the look on my face right now. I was in serious disbelief. I nearly disengaged because I almost thought that I needed a moment to process what actually just happened. Like, don't get me wrong, I knew that version 13 was gonna be able to reverse, right? Like, that was the whole thing. They teased that for a while, but what just happened was unbelievable. Like, something like that is what I expect the last version of version 13 to do, and not the very first one out of the gate. Like, what are later versions of version 13 gonna look like? And if it can already do that, oh my God, we're in for a real treat here. There is another pretty tough intersection up here that, if I remember correctly, was the cause of several disengagements on earlier versions where the car would not get out of the way in traffic, but check this out. The car just goes right into the median and scoots itself far enough up to where it's not blocking traffic from behind, waits for the cars approaching in the oncoming lanes, and then proceeds immediately. I mean, what do I even say? It handles some of these situations so well that it's almost boring, which honestly has me a little bit concerned about the future of this YouTube channel. I mean, there's just not the amount of drama there used to be by any means anymore, which is a very good thing. You can see someone's grabbing something out of the back of their car, so it gradually slows down as it goes around this corner, and just the smoothness, even when it's forced to get close to these other cars, is just truly something special. And like I said, version 12 was definitely smooth through here as well, and you can go back and look at my videos, but there's just something about this that feels very different in a very good way. We're approaching our second navigation pin, which is this house directly in front of us, and you can see the car goes ahead and pulls off to the side of the road, but does so in a way where it's going to have to reverse again. And I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about reverse, because it doesn't do it all the time. I've noticed that it only seems to be able to shift to reverse when no driver profile is showing at the bottom of the screen. So currently we have profiles like chill, standard, hurry, all that stuff, and it seems like there's this mysterious fourth profile that disappears in certain scenarios, and that's when the car is allowed to shift into reverse. When those profiles are active, I've never seen the car successfully shift to reverse. It tries, and the path planner wants to, but it never actually does. U-turn in the navigation route directly ahead of us at this next intersection, and I mean, just by far the best U-turn I have ever felt the car do before. And I'll say again, it's not like version 12 wasn't capable of doing U-turns, but it definitely wasn't capable of doing U-turns like that. It seems absolutely effortless. Approaching a roundabout, and you can see there's a stop sign in the navigation data, but it's not for us. It's actually a stop sign for the road off to our left. And for the first time, it correctly does not stop and instead uses the yield sign properly. I think every other time we've been through that intersection, the car has come to a full stop because it thought it had to control for that stop sign that was facing us, but this one seems to understand that it's a yield. And the most interesting thing, I think, is the stop sign was in the navigation route, so it literally ignored the navigation data and obeyed the sign. Pretty wild. Approaching the end of our third navigation route, which is this house right off to our left here. There was a street that I wanted it to go down, but unfortunately it didn't want to turn left here, which I'm probably pretty thankful for because it looks like it's a private driveway. And then it shifts itself into reverse and backs along the curb to get further out of the street. It is like version 13 is just showing off at this point. And I've heard other people testing version 13 say they have a really hard time getting it to shift to reverse, and I really don't know the rhyme or reason about why the car picks certain profiles. It doesn't seem area dependent, or I really don't know, and I think I need a little bit more seat time to figure it out. We're approaching an all-way stop sign here, and it's a little hesitant to proceed, and that is because a cyclist is flying through the intersection to our left without stopping. So I know a lot of people have problems with cyclists running stop signs. I really don't have any issue with it, but very nice job not proceeding right away. Coming up, we have a pretty blind, unprotected left turn. This exact intersection has been the cause of many disengagements in the past if you go through the videos, and that's because you have to creep so far forward to get any visibility of anything. So you can see as soon as a car creeps forward, it spots some cars. Then once it's clear, it decides to go. And when another car is approaching, we get a nice little speed boost getting us out of there. Very, very nicely done. A lot of people still seem to think the B-pillar camera is the reason why these cars will never actually be self-driving, but I think the actual behavior is much more important. And in that case, it did it perfectly. I also wanted to point out that you can see the steering wheel turn to the right here before making this left turn, almost like it's going extra wide, which I really like to see because some previous versions would cut the inside of the corners all the time, which was pretty uncomfortable. Cybertruck making its first appearance on the right-hand side of the video, and you're also going to see a pedestrian who looks like they want to cross the street, and for a moment it looked like the car was going to yield to him and then decided not to. I think that was probably fine, and again, doing an excellent job with these really tight corners, and then we get a windshield wipe. And do not judge me for this new counter. I can feel you judging me through the screen right now, but honestly, what else am I going to count? Approaching the end of our next navigation route here, and this one I picked because I knew for sure it was a dead end, but what I didn't realize is this is the end of the street, and to our left is actually a private driveway. So there's a person standing out there at the end of their driveway, and they see me pulling in, and they're like, what the heck are you doing? So I do disengage here and manually pull a little Austin Powers move myself. I know there's probably going to be some upset comments about people saying I shouldn't have counted that as an intervention because it was completely my fault and the car was doing nothing wrong, but I always have before. So once I can yell at the car to stop and turn around, I won't count it, but for now it remains. Another thing interesting to note here is that the car is driving extremely slow. You can see the driver profile is no longer showing up below, and it just seems like it's being extra cautious down this street. It's going way slower than usual. This happened a few times on this drive, and it almost makes me think that whenever this mysterious fourth profile is active, it's almost like a really advanced version of actually Smart Summon or something, where it's a primary goal is just to be as safe as possible and not hit anything. And I mean, I say that, but at the same time, I've also seen it pull some pretty crazy moves in this mysterious profile and speed as well. So I really don't know. I hope you're starting to understand why this video took so long for me to get out, because when I make a video, I want to have something to tell you, and I want to know how it works at a deeper level. And even after hundreds and hundreds of miles with version 13, I still feel like I don't have a real understanding about how it works. Now, I want you to monitor just how the car is driving through this next section of road, because we drive through here twice in this video. This is the first time, and the second time there's the same situation basically, but a single variable is changed, and it changes the car's behavior completely. So I needed to slow that down just to give you a baseline for the next time we come through there. Approaching our fourth destination, or is this the fifth destination? I don't know anymore. Approaching our destination, and you can see some pedestrians walking on each side of the road, and it just splits in the middle of them, but does so very nice and smoothly and safely. And it goes ahead and just parks right behind this delivery truck. New navigation route is in, and it has to go through some pretty tight quarters here, and does so extremely slow and smoothly. And my favorite thing about this is that there's no harsh inputs. It's not accelerating and braking and changing its mind all the time. It's just going smoothly. And I will probably just keep repeating that over and over and over again, because there is something in version 13 that feels dramatically different than any other version before it. It truly does feel like there is a brand new driver in here. We're approaching that same section of road again, but this time there is a pedestrian that walks into the road and then walks behind the van. And even when they disappear behind the van, the car still seems to understand the context that there's probably somebody still there and stays slow, way slower than the first time we went through here the entire time until the road opens up again. There's a lot of situations like that and the thing that happened on the freeway that make me think that the car has a lot more context than before, even though this is before the 3x increase in context window that's coming in a future release. Also slowing this part down because this intersection right here was one that has caused us a lot of trouble in the past, where it would kind of stop at that yield sign and not handle the situation properly, but now it is just, again, absolutely effortless, like it was never a problem at all. Approaching this blind corner and an oncoming car approaches at probably the worst moment possible. I'm just going to shut up for a second and let you watch this play out. Absolutely unbelievably smooth. I don't think I would be able to handle that situation as smooth as the car just did. Truly an unbelievable moment. We were already committed to passing those parked cars. There is no worse time that oncoming car could have popped out, and the reaction times were excellent. It did the exact right thing. Again, zero drama. There's also a lot of times that I just wanted to show you that we did have some pretty direct sunlight. The sun is pretty low in the horizon, but I have yet to get a take over immediately sign on any of my drives so far. So I know other people have been pointing out that they've been experiencing that, but I have not had one of those instances yet. We are arriving to our destination, which is this house right off to our right here, and man, what a beautiful house with a absolutely gorgeous view overlooking the Bay Area. Gotta be honest with you, I wish this was my house that I was pulling up to right now, because my goodness, it is absolutely gorgeous. Maybe someday. And after a new navigation route is in, we are off again, trying to just find out where the limits of this thing are. Obviously not doing an excellent job so far. It's absolutely nailed all the intersections that I used to bring it through that would usually give me a critical disengagement almost every time. I mean, obviously with version 12 it was much improved, but this so far has just been ridiculous. Turning right at this next intersection here, and something interesting happens. Even though there's no traffic approaching from the left, the car pauses for a moment because there's a traffic approaching from the right, and they're actually hugging the inside of their lane. So excellent job spotting that out and reacting to it very, very early. That is definitely an area where I feel like computer vision is much better, because humans cannot be looking in all directions at once like the car can. You'll see a jogger off to the side of the road who looks like he's going to jog out right in front of us, and it does trigger the car's forward collision warning. And yes, that is another brand new counter for something that I did not use to count against full self-driving before, but I gotta count something against it so that we can see any differences in future versions. What a crazy problem to have, right? I did not think we'd be getting here for quite a while. More collision warnings for a person who is crawling into the back of their trunk, and interesting to note that the car actually isn't reacting to them that I can tell at all. It's not like it's braking or doing any sudden maneuvers or anything like that. It's just the forward collision warning that's activating. We're in that same roundabout but going a different direction. This time we do have an actual stop sign. You can see it stop and yield, and it actually proceeds before the person to our left. It almost seems more confident about its driving ability and knows what to do in a roundabout than a lot of the humans in this intersection. And again and again and again, just the best that it's ever been handled. When I say buttery smooth around these intersections, it almost doesn't even properly convey what I'm feeling inside of the car. This thing is so smooth, way, way, way better than the average driver for sure. Little awkward interaction with the pedestrian up here. You can see this other driver just makes sure she's going to stop, and then even after they pass and she still doesn't have the right of way, she keeps taking little steps towards the road. Doesn't actually get to the road, but just taking little micro steps towards it, and confused the car for a second there, but it got through just fine. But there was a slight bit of steering wheel jitterness as it was trying to decide if they were going to cross or not, and that's the most jerky I've seen the steering wheel in all of my drives so far, which is really, really impressive. Another destination reached, and you can see there's some inconsistency in the way that it kind of parks and pulls over. Sometimes it just pulls over, sometimes it actually parks. I think we're going to see a lot more consistency in future releases once we are able to select what we want the car to do at the end of the navigation routes. And it does have to maneuver its way out of here by kind of shimmying around just like before, but after what we saw in that very, very narrow dead-end street, this is basically easy for full self-driving. This is nothing, which is kind of crazy to say because, you know, the way the cars were parked on this street and the no driveways being open did make this kind of an awkward maneuver, but again, compared to the last one that it did, this is easy. Definitely let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about how the car is doing and everything, and also what jobs I should be applying for, since with the release of version 13, I think the future of this YouTube channel has been shortened considerably. Approaching that same roundabout for the third time, and yes, we do have a stop sign coming from this direction again, which I know the European mind can just not comprehend. And even when a car kind of pulls out in front of us, no reaction from full self-driving, just absolutely butter smooth. And I know I can only tell you how smooth this is so many times before you get bored and leave, but hey, if you're still here watching, I have an exciting announcement to make. One of the reasons I haven't been uploading as frequently as I used to, even though that wasn't even very frequently, is because I've been working on a super cool project that I'll be making an official announcement about in the next month or two. And I am super excited to show off all the work we've been able to get done so far and what this thing is capable of. I can't tell you very much about it right now. I definitely don't want to ruin the surprise, but already have and will continue to be dropping hints about it here and there. So definitely stay tuned. You can see a lady walking her dog, and if you look at the dog visualization, the little paws are moving back and forth. Is that new? I think that might be new. Pretty awesome, and doing a really good job just going nice and slow and such a natural speed through these tight corridors. This is exactly what you want a self-driving car to do. And another example of pretty severe sun glare where the sun is directly in front of us. I've seen other people post videos where this causes a takeover immediately, but my car seems to be unaffected so far. We're arriving to our next destination, and this was the one time where I feel like the car did not do a very good job of choosing a good spot to stop. Like, shifting yourself into park in this spot in the middle of the road is just not ideal. There was no traffic around, so no big deal. I didn't need to intervene to move out of the way or anything, but definitely looking forward to future versions where you can select what you want the car to do at the end of a destination, because if you looked back, you can actually see that the car detected the spot in front of the truck that was off to the right as a parallel parking spot, so hopefully in the future it'll just be able to park there on its own. Kind of like it did earlier, just randomly. Coming up to another pretty tough unprotected left-hand turn where visibility is not that great. It appears to be detecting the cars approaching from pretty far away, which is nice to see. And I also love this slow 1 mile an hour creep. Even though there's cars still visible, it's still creeping forward, showing good intention and a nice boost of acceleration to get out of the way of the other car approaching from our left-hand side. Beautifully done. We're coming up to a situation of a clip that I posted on X that I was completely wrong about. So there was a Jeep in front of us who decides that here is a great spot to just pull a U-turn in the middle of a road around this blind corner across double yellow lines. And I figured this had to be illegal, right? Turns out I was completely wrong. There is nothing in California law preventing someone doing from what they just did. So if I argued with you about that one on X, I hereby apologize. You were right, I was wrong. Approaching another destination down a dead-end road, and this one turned out to be, again, another private driveway. There's a bunch of signs posted here basically saying don't drive here unless you live here, and the car does seem to get a little bit stuck in the entrance to this driveway, and it's telling me to take over to proceed. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it's telling me take over to proceed. And I figured this was it. Version 13 had a nice run, but this is where we got stuck. But right when I put in the next navigation route, it just took off, no problem. I was actually secretly hoping it would get stuck there so I could end the video because my camera batteries were running on fumes. And just a few short turns later, you see it have to negotiate with another oncoming car and puts itself behind this trailer. But because it's in the actual standard profile at this point and not in that fourth mysterious profile, it's not able to shift itself into reverse. And I'm actually pretty confident I could have just overridden the accelerator here to make it get by here. But I didn't want to end the video with an intervention. So this is it. This is where the car got to on its own without any intervention. I mean, besides the one intervention that was completely my fault. And what else was there? A windshield wipe and a couple collision warnings? Absolutely wild. Thank you so much for watching, and another big thanks to DeleteMe for sponsoring this video. Until next time, everybody, bye.